Alright, so fortunately we're back for part 2 of this demonstration. Today we're going to cover a lot of what processing will do. Does anyone remember where we left off with the last session? I do. So last session basically what we did was we completed an application, and we also kind of, we expanded it to do mortgage insurance, we expanded it to do a subordination. So we covered the application process at length. Now it's more in regards to the process. So at first it was the application, we looked at a few different applications, but now we're going to focus a little bit more on the process. So what I'm going to show you is how we go about originating a loan. Yesterday we took an application, we ordered services, we locked the loan. Now we're at the point where the client has supplied us with their paperwork. We're going to upload that paperwork and kind of get the file moving forward. Just like last time, if you guys have questions, please feel free to ask. Randy, if you come up with any questions, ask them. It's always a good way to learn. So we already have a completed application. Last time we kind of touched on the application completed milestone. This is where we would be at within the process. So this one has not been finished yet. So I'm going to go ahead and key in this requested data right here. So present mortgage payment, we'll just put in a number. And looks like we have a closing date of August 15th, so we'll go ahead and use that as our interest from date.
Could you also kind of expand on this section down here, required fields? So that just, it brings up anything that might not be populated?
Correct. So you'll notice within the log, up in the section right here, this is kind of the milestones and the progression of a file. We start with the authorized for credit. We've already completed that. We are now at the application completed stage, and one of the nice features about Encompass is if you are missing the necessary items to complete a milestone, Encompass is going to stop you and say, please complete these details. So right here it's asking for 2 bits of information. What is the close of escrow date? We had August 15th, 2014. The interest from date, when do we start charging interest to the client? That would be the same date that we fund the loan. So now that I've completed these 2 fields, it's going to allow me to finish the milestone. In this circumstance, attachment type on transmittal page 2 must be attached or detached only. So
it should be an approval, really.
Correct. Yeah, it looks like those new enhancements we rolled out are currently in effect. So it referred us to go to the transmittal, and it asked us to complete attached or detached as our type. Let's see.
It's actually page 2.
Transmittal page 2, there it is. Alright, so in the subject property information section, we're going to go ahead and complete that. Did I miss it?
Yeah. Go down a little. Go down. Right there.
Attachment type. Okay, so we're going to say this is a detached residence. So Encompass has prompted me a couple times over to get the correct paperwork or correct data. I now feel we have that, and it now allows me to complete the application completed milestone. So you guys will notice that finished milestones are bolded. As you get farther and farther in the progressions, it asks for more and more and more data. So that is required prior to resubmittal. Here we have items required prior to final approval. And the milestones up here is just the progression that the file would work through. So we have completed the application. We have ordered services and locked the interest rate. So now it's just a matter of getting the necessary documentation from the client and uploading it to the e-folder. Does anyone know the requirements to, we'll say, submit a loan? That's all right, that's why we're here. So there are a few items. Encompass is a computer system, so it's going to look for certain tasks to be completed. With regards to submission, we have a few major tasks. So in our e-folder, which is accessible in the top right of any Encompass file, the e-folder stores all the paperwork that's associated with the loan. We are paperless nowadays, so we don't have paper files. Everything is going to get stored in this Encompass e-folder. So I'm going to switch to standard view. Really the difference between standard view and paperless view. Standard view is alphabetized, and that's helpful for me. So we've got credit report and VOM. I need to upload certain client documents to the e-folder. So the required items are going to be, the first things first is going to be the signed disclosures. So we have to get the electronically signed disclosures back from the client. Once we have them, I'm going to hit this plus sign. Plus sign will add something. So we're within the E folder. It's going to add a new document. We're always going to use add a new document. We're going to click OK. Now, if anyone had to guess, where should I save my disclosures to based off what we see right here?
Disclosures?
That's a great guess, sir. So you guys will notice there's disclosures, there's disclosure notices, and disclosures COC. It's very important we select disclosures. Once again, Encompass is a computer system. If the task in mind is to upload a document to disclosures, if you upload it elsewhere, task hasn't been completed. So looks like I keep getting prompted. Let me go ahead and key this in. Okay. So now I'm going to be uploading documents to the disclosures section. I have saved my client's disclosures on my desktop. Let's see where they are. We'll call them signed disclosures. So it's just a matter of double clicking it. Encompass is going to upload that document, and once it's uploaded, you'll notice it can be accessed now and forever. We don't need that. So all the disclosures have been uploaded to the E folder. And once we close this out, you guys will notice we now have disclosures with a paperclip. The paperclip designates something is there. So clients return the signed disclosures. That's step number 1. Step number 2 is I have to upload the client paperwork to what we call the shell file. Client paperwork would be income documentation, asset documentation, maybe a mortgage statement, insurance declaration, things like that, tax returns, what have you. The shell file is basically the file folder where we just put all of the client-related stuff in. So here we have shell file. I'm going to upload my documents by selecting Browse and Attach. Now, I could do it one at a time, but that would be foolish. You actually can do a number of items at once. So if you hold Shift, you can highlight multiple items, or if you hold Control, you can click a few of them. So we're going to grab the pay stubs, the mortgage statements. I don't need a prelim. I don't need that 4506, and here's my W-2. So I've selected the items that I want to upload to the shell file. And once again, shell file is just basically a location where MPs, mortgage professionals, will put all of the client documentation. So now we have all of the individual items up here. If I just wanted to see the pay stub, I can click on that. There it is. If I wanted to see all of them, I could highlight all of them, and then it would compile them all together in one nice and neat PDF. So now I could scroll through everything. This accidentally changed. Let me change it on back to shell file. So now I have documents in my disclosures folder, and I have documents in my shell file. Those are 2 out of the 3 steps to originate or submit a loan in the process. The third one's actually quite easy. If we look at the third one, we're going to go to the revised origination summary. This is where we completed our loan application with the last go around. Revised loan application is pretty much the place to be for completing apps. At the very top, there's going to be an income received date. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and fill in the state. It's simple as clicking OK to confirm. And now I'm going to hit save. So what we've done with this file to actually get it into the submission process is we've uploaded documents to the disclosures section of the E folder. So that's in disclosures. We have uploaded the client paperwork within the shell file section. And now we have disclosures and shell file created, and we have our income received. After you hit save, the file moves forward to the submission status. So at submission status, the loan is essentially in processing. At that point, the file is moving forward. It's going through our process, and certain triggers that happen at submission is going to be, that's when the appraisal report is ordered. So Greenlight pays for appraisals, but you guys could see how we wouldn't want to lock a deal and then send a $450 payment. A lot of our business will lock loans. The client may not get us the paperwork back. They may disappear. They may be resold elsewhere. So once the paperwork comes back, we take that as we have a motivated client who's on board, and at that point, we'll trigger the appraisal order. So Within 24 hours of submission, the appraisal will be paid for, and the appraisal management company will contact the client to set up an appraisal inspection. Any questions on the origination process or submission? Pretty straightforward, right? All right, so if I ask the question again, what are the 3 steps associated with submission? What would they be?
Disclosure,
Disclosures to disclosures, step 1.
and then shelf file,
Documents to the shelf file, correct.
and populating income.
And populating income receive date, that's correct. So those 3 steps will go ahead and originate a loan. At this step, we also have agents put in comments. So to access comments, it's as simple as add view comments. And what we actually ask our agents for is to comment a little bit on the benefit of the loan. Net tangible benefit is dropping payment by $200 a month. And lastly, we say discussed approximate $600 shortage due at closing. Oops. So after we put this note in, this identifies that we discussed with the client they have to bring in $600 at closing, and then we comment on the net tangible benefit. This is just kind of a quality control measure. We want to make sure that agents are truly discussing the funds due at closing with the clients. So that is of the utmost importance. We put that in, and then it would be saved in add view comments. So this file has been originated, and it's now in a position where it can move forward to the loan setup stage. Can anyone guess what loan setup does?
Set up the loan.
They set up the loan and they kind of audit the loan.
Yeah. Okay.
They'll order verifications, they'll order 4506s, they'll order payoff demands. So you kind of view them as a production support division. Our agents and processors could do all of those responsibilities, but we'd rather have them either selling or working on the more difficult parts.
What is a 4506? Is that what you call it?
Correct. So a 4506 is a request for tax transcripts. So I think I might have one here, assuming it's truly a 4506. I can't show you the top portion because it does contain socials, but let me show you kind of the bottom. This is a document we'll send to the IRS, and we have it electronically signed by the clients. And it basically says, give me tax transcripts for October, 2013, for 2012, and for 2011. So this gets taken care of when the disclosures are electronically signed. We get the separated 4506. Once the file gets to loan setup, they're going to send this off to the IRS, and the IRS will actually get back to us within about 3 or 4 days with the transcripts. Transcripts are essentially tax returns. They just don't have all of the data. So line 7, for example, on a tax return is gross income. Well, it's just going to say line 7 equals 100,000. It won't tell you what line 7 equals. So we do that to confirm that the tax returns provided are legitimate and accurate. So the 4506 we'll go ahead and upload. We'll select either documents, new document, or we can hit the plus sign, add a new document. Let's see what our options are. 4506 final, 4506 initial, and 4506T. They all sound pretty good. 4506 initial is recommended. However, loan setup will look at each of those folders. They'll look at all of them, but we tell people upload it to 4506 initial. I've got my 4506 initial, I've got disclosures, I've got shelf file, I've got credit reports that I've ran. All of that is stored within the e-folder. So let's take a look at the loan setup page. Loan setup works within loan setup tracking. So this page is right here in the forms tab. The loan setup initiated, basically they're going to say, I started the loan setup today. So this is kind of a tracking milestones. I reviewed the AUS and it is eligible. I have ordered my 4506. The 4506 is actually ordered through Veritax. It's an external website. Unfortunately, I can't show you that, but we're focused on Encompass, not Veritax, so we should be okay there. 1003 complete. Yes, it is completed. They reviewed it. And then they'll go ahead and order a flood certification as well. So this one, it's telling me that I have to identify the flood zone first. We'll say it's 500-year flood zone. And it's going to ask us for the flood certification number, so we'll just key in any figure there. Now that I've got that complete, it's going to identify that all of the necessary tasks are completed. In the event there was something wrong with the file, you know, it was missing income information, or perhaps it didn't have the necessary documentation, Loan Setup can reject it by pressing this button right here. I don't want to press that because I don't want to reject this file, we want to move it forward. So this has been a completed Loan Setup tracking. Question?
You can undo it also, right?
It looks like you can undo it by selecting X. I just didn't want to get put on a list that goes to our VP, so we'll clean it up. But fortunately, you can roll those milestones back. Flood cert's ordered, it's done, rejected, nope, we like it, we'll keep it. So what Loan Setup does is actually pretty easy. If you look at the first things, it's just a matter of reviewing the file. You know, I ordered the 4506, I reviewed the 1003, the flood cert's been ordered, AUS has been reviewed. After the file kind of moves along a little bit, we will then order the payoff demand. So after a certain milestone, probably a conditional underwriting approval, Loan Setup is going to go ahead and order a payoff demand. So they're going to say we've ordered the payoff demand. That's going to identify that the request is out. This way the processor can track it. Once the payoff demand is received, they'll go ahead and complete this step, and they'll upload it. If you had to guess, where might the payoff demand be uploaded? Let's see what our options are. Probably in the P section.
Yeah.
Payoff demand, that sounds pretty good, right? So they'll go ahead and select payoff demand, and then they can go ahead and upload that. I don't think I created a, kind of a dummy payoff demand, so we'll just put a pay stub there and say it's a payoff demand. Alright, so now we've got a payoff demand in file. At this stage, while the file's in Loan Setup and the initial stages of getting to the processor's desk, that's where you start to see other bits of information show up. One of those would in fact be the preliminary title report. So the title report will automatically show up once completed. You'll see right here it does identify itself as a title report. I have to upload this considering this isn't a real file, but what happens is when a mortgage professional locks the interest rate, it actually orders the preliminary title report. We don't have to pay for prelims. If we order a prelim and we don't fund that loan, they don't send us a bill. Hey, we sent you 15 pieces of paperwork, send us a check. They only charge us if we fund the loan. So for that reason, we can order prelims like crazy. We don't want to pay for appraisals like crazy because that's a $400 item and it could get quite expensive. So upload the prelim. The prelim would normally be automatically placed there by the Encompass file system. And now we have a completed prelim within the file. So you can see how the e-folder does grow as you progress more and more and more through it. You've got your 4506, your disclosures, your payoff demand, you've got a shelf file, you've got a title report. In the event we ordered underwriting would actually get stored within that e-folder as well. So a lot of documents are automatically going to be placed in the e-folder. It's just a matter of going through those services to actually have them register. So we don't have a real user in this circumstance, which is why we can't get findings. But in the event we did complete the automated underwriting, you'd have a section in here called underwriting that would actually contain any automated underwriting system that we've ran. So underwriting would in fact contain AUS findings, and it would get stored in there. So now we have an underwriting in there. We'll also run Mavent. Mavent Compliance Review is accessed in the Tools tab. So Mavent Compliance Review. Once we preview, every time we order a Mavent, that would be another item that's going to be stored in the e-folder.
Can you explain Maven again?
Yes, so Mavent, we kind of touched on it briefly last time. What it is it's a good overall comprehensive compliance check. So there's a number of federal regulations that we have to adhere to with regards to high-priced mortgage loans, Homeowner Equity Protection Act, RESPA, Reg Z, TILA, I mean, the list goes on and on. Now, in addition to those federal requirements, you also have state requirements. So various states have various rules, and honestly, they're all over the place. We can't expect our mortgage professionals to be abreast of every single federal and state law. They go through the licensing motions, but you know, you spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week doing a job, you forget the stuff that doesn't affect you day by day. So that's where Maven comes into play. Maven is going to look over your loan from all aspects and tell you if it's qualified and acceptable to them and compliant. So let's take a look at what it shows. So it's going to show you, there's a thing called a high price covered transaction. And what it basically boils down to is your APR too high? APR is going to be based off your rate and the closing costs. So in this case, your 4.66 APR does not exceed the threshold of 5.66. So we are below the APR threshold. That's one of the things we check. Moving along, it's going to say, do you have any exotic loan characteristics like negative amortization or interest only? These things aren't allowed anymore. So it's going to review and say, no, it doesn't contain interest only or negative amortizations, and no, it's not exceeding 30 years. This is a standard QM compliant loan. Beneath that, it's going to comment on fees. You know, there's, in addition to interest rate thresholds and APR thresholds, there's fee thresholds. So, do your loan fees exceed the threshold of $10,000? No, they do not. So we pass there. The federal government also has a separate requirement with regards to APR. It's going to be identified here shortly, but QM, do you exceed the 43% debt ratio threshold? No, you do not. Moving along, do you meet the TILA rules? So your limit, your maximum APR is 11% here. You're at 4.66. Do you exceed TILA? Do you exceed the high cost for the Fed? So it looks at all of these federal regulations and rules and will tell you pass, or warning, alert, or fail. Make sure that you are HOPA compliant, your HPML is okay. There's a California higher price mortgage loan restriction as well. You also have, it's going to review the loan originator. So this QA account right here is set up as user training. It searched the NMLS and it says, hey, warning, you're saying your NMLS ID is 314069, however, user training doesn't match. So it's looking at me, the loan officer, to make sure I'm compliant. Does NationStar have a relationship set up with the loan officer? Yes, they do. Does this person user training for? Can they be found in the MLS? No, they cannot. Is this person in relation to NationStar? Yes, they are. So when you look at this thing and you see that there's 15, 16 pages of information that it's reviewing, you can understand how many federal and state laws there are with regards to compliance. It would take an agent an hour and a half to look at all those rules, whereas you can press a button and Maven will generate it just like that. So Maven is a very comprehensive compliance system. It will look at APRs, loan originators, clients. It makes sure clients aren't on disallowed lists, the OFAC, the disallowed persons list. So it looks at clients, loan officers, lenders, loan characteristics, APRs, pretty much anything and everything. After Maven has been ran, we look in the e-folder, and sure enough, within the compliance report, you'll see compliance report. So everything that is ran through Encompass, for the most part, will be stored in the e-folder, which is kind of nice. Do we have any additional questions on Maven? No? All right, wonderful. So looking at our e-folder, we just want to make sure that everything's kind of well set up for processing. We've moved the file through Loan Setup. Loan Setup is going to audit the file and run some of the more low-end tasks that are easier to perform. After it clears Loan Setup, it's going to make it to the processor's desk. And we should have our processing training manager up in here in about 5 minutes. So we can go ahead and start on the processing portion in about 5 minutes. If you guys have any questions for the time being, we can go over that now. No questions? All right, so we'll refresh on something we covered last week while we wait for Brandy. Do you guys remember how I go about keying in mortgage insurance, or where that would be? So were you saying the little pad and pen symbol? Okay. So now that I'm in the mortgage insurance worksheet, what data is it looking for monthly mortgage insurance? Do you guys remember? Which one? Maybe MIP? Good guess. This would actually be for an FHA loan. So FHA loans, for example, have an upfront mortgage insurance premium. It's typically 1.75%. So here you would see you have a base loan amount of $350. It's going to charge $6,125 as your upfront mortgage insurance premium. And since we're not paying any of it in cash, it's going to assume that you want to finance it. So it's going to take $350 plus $61.25, and now your note amount is going to be $356.125. The monthly mortgage insurance is actually covered in this section down here. So monthly mortgage insurance for FHA loans is typically 1.3%, and it's going to determine how many months remaining based off LTV. So I'm below 90% loan to value. This will remain for 12 years. After I click OK, it's going to be able to calculate a mortgage insurance payment. So mortgage insurance is populated and driven by the cells that you see right here. This is the monthly section, and this is the upfront mortgage insurance premium section. The upfront mortgage insurance premium is going to show right here. You'll see you have a loan amount, it finances it, you've got your total loan amount, and it kind of summarizes it in that details of transaction section. Now, one other thing from last go around. Do you guys remember where we go to identify a loan with subordinate financing? We were working off the revised origination summary, so let's get back to that. With the revised origination summary, there's going to be a location cleverly entitled subfinancing, and you'll see it right here. So you've got subfinancing button, and then you have your HELOC actual balance and your HELOC credit limit. If we did have a HELOC, we're going to say the actual balance is $40,000. We would say the credit limit's $50,000. And now it's going to see that we have separate loan to values and combined loan to values. Whenever you have subordinate financing, these two numbers are going to differ. So home equity line of credit is going to ask you for the balance. It's going to ask you for the credit limit. In the event this was a fixed rate loan, like a home equity loan, that's not a line of credit, we're going to go to the subfinancing section, and we would key in the balance right here. So that's really the distinguishing factor amongst the two. It's where did you key in the data? Did you key it into the subfinancing button? If so, that delineates a HE loan, home equity loan. If you keyed it into the home equity line of credit section, that would designate that we do have a home equity line of credit as our subordination. So now we've got it set up where we have varying LTVs and CLTVs, and fortunately Encompass is reading that correct. Alright, so we'll go ahead and clear that out. I'm going to go ahead and check to see where our processing trainer is. Alright. Any questions while I have this page up? Alright, wonderful. So let me just make sure I have this file nice and neat so Brandy can kind of take the torch and run with it. What Brandy's going to show you next, she's going to show you how a processor goes about submitting a file. So with the submission milestone, we would submit the loan. The underwriter will then approve the loan. They will issue conditions associated with that approval. So we have to resubmit the loan to satisfy those conditions, and then finally you have your full approval. So just got a response. Brandy should be up here in about a minute or two. Question?
Do you assign a loan processor at this stage for the processor to pick it up, or it just assign?
The system will automatically assign a process. It's going to assign a processing manager, and then the processing manager will then assign one of their team members. So I want to find a... Hagop, we had a file that was pretty far along last time. I think it was a...
I have a few if you just type my last name.
Okay, let's see. Is it G-H-A?
A-Z-A.
Okay, so let me pull this up. So everyone, we got Brandy Strom here. She's our processing training manager. She's going to kind of show us the processing ropes. And let's see, we're going to have to roll one of these back. I just want to make sure everything's...
You can use any of
Okay, perfect. So Brandy, I'm going to upload certain documents for you. I couldn't complete the necessary milestones, so we had to find a new file here.
Okay.
Alright, so let me get these documents uploaded to the appropriate place. We've got documents and disclosures. Nice refresher. We'll put some documents in the shell file. Okay. Alright. So we got our bank statement. We're going to say insurance, pay stub, mortgage statement, W-2. Alright, looks like we have a lot of documents going in there, so it'll just take a slight moment. Okay, shell file's uploaded. We've got disclosures. Let me make sure prelim is uploaded. So we'll drop down to the prelim section. Or title report, sorry.
These better be real documents.
I know, most of them are. Scrubbed for data, of course. So
Can you just
prelim.
switch it to my name? Let me give you a property address.
Oh, is it a... Let's see. Okay, so we got that set. So we've got shell file, we've got disclosures, we've got title report, we've got an appraisal in there. Brandy, what else? Were we missing anything else? 4506?
Will you pretend we have a credit?
Okay, 4506. Okay, so we've got that set. And let me go ahead. I'm going to roll these milestones back, Brandy, because currently the file is at final approval.
Yeah.
And we're not ready for that yet. Okay, so approval, resubmittal is finished. Let's uncheck that. Conditional underwriting is finished. All right, Brandy, so I will let you take over. We've got a file that has been sent to processing, and pretty much, I guess,
Okay.
show us what we do, and then I can do the condition adding after you submit the loan, and then you can clear it if you like.
Okay. Did you talk a little bit about what loan setup does, or do you
Yeah.
guys need to know?
We covered loan setup. Did anyone have any follow-up questions on loan setup? All right, so ready for submission.
Okay, so from what I understand, you guys are looking mostly for Encompass inputs, why the processor would do them, where that would come from, at what point in the game they're inputting that information. So I'm going to kind of abridge that just to kind of make it focused towards you guys, but just let me know if I'm giving too much detail or not enough detail, and I can adjust if you need more. Okay. So like Steve said, application's been completed, they've sent out their disclosures, got those back, uploaded what's needed. Loan setup has, began working on that file. Loan setup and the processor actually get the file at the exact same time. So there is a little bit of a weird area where loan setup is working on it as is processing. So sometimes that overlaps a little bit. So what happens, what we tell the processor is if they come in here and they see that loan setup hasn't finished working on that file, just try to go to a different file so they can finish setting up. And one way they can tell is, like you guys already saw, if you come into this E folder and you don't have all those folders available. One thing that loan setup does is they're going to set that file up for the processor. So they're going to use this paperless folder setup. And what that's going to do is set up all of our folders. Okay? And we do have all these other views. Processors are mainly going to work in this view here, so we'll kind of work from there. All right, so first thing we have the processors do is look at the income and just make sure that this file is qualifying. What they're going to do is they're going to look at the AUS that the loan setup has pulled out from the underwriting folders. And processor is going to review that, determine what's needed, come down into the shell file down here that the agent has uploaded, and see what they have. So we've got a pay stub, for this one, it's from September 15th. It's usually a pay stub and a W-2, what they need, so they would just grab those, We're gonna calculate the income from them and move these into a folder, not in the shell, because the underwriters aren't gonna go there. They're only gonna review items that are actually in folders where they're supposed to be. So to do that, we have to go to the file manager to move those items. So originally in the shell, we would just take the pay stub. Looks like we only move one at a time. And you just roll and drop them into the income folder. Go grab the W-2. Move that one into the income as well. So now they're viewable for the underwriter. Once they're in there, when they're actually calculating their income, they're gonna come into this comment section in the tracking, and they would make a comment right here, would be $40 times 40 hours times B2 divided by 12 equals, they'll put in, you'll get that calculation, and then whatever it is, we're going to come and update that on page 2 of our 1003 right there. And that's just them showing the underwriter how they came up with that number. One thing that we do have our processors do, if the agent submits the file with borrower income, co-borrower income, overtime bonus commission, we've got some pensions or whatever, Social Security, if it's got all this stuff on it and we don't need it, we're gonna get it down to the lowest common denominator and get rid of all the extra stuff and just go with the least amount possible we need to qualify, just so at least so it's under that 45%. So you will see that even though there are multiple borrowers or more, there could be kinds of other income, if we don't need it to qualify, we're gonna keep it in the shell file and not have it on our 1003. Because anything on the 1003 needs to be substantiated within the file. For the 4506, if that's in at this point, they will go through. So that's really all that they're doing for income. Do you guys have any questions on that?
On the 40506 or 4506, initial is when the agent puts it and then the processor puts in the T, that's where the separation happens, or?
So the 4506T is it's the form that's actually signed that allows Greenlight to go and request the 4506. So loan setup is going to initially request those. If there's any kind of rejection that comes back, it gets pushed onto the processor. The processor will fix the 4506T, have that new one signed, and they will actually go in there and order it again. Once it does come back, that's the 4506, and it will have the 2 or 3 years of transcripts that will separate out based on what the AUS is asking for.
Okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to title. So it usually takes, maybe 2 or 3 days for those to come in. Sometimes with rural areas, it's a little bit longer. It's not required to submit, but it's definitely on the wish list of things we would like to see for sure. They're going to check a few things on here. They're going to check the property type, make sure that that's how Encompass was set up by the agent correctly in the pricer. And then also, they're going to look at the manner in which title is currently being held in. So right now, John W. Conley and Gail R. Conley as joint tenants with survivorship. So they're just going to confirm that that's staying the same. If there is anything different, maybe we look at our 1003 and we see that, she's marked, or John is marked as divorced and Gail isn't on the loan anymore. We know that we're going to have to do some kind of grant deed that is changing that vesting. So we'll talk about that. And Greenlight, we will change that vesting for them when we draw their docs. And we'll send out those extra forms with that. But where they're going to check that, it's always easier when you have 2 screens, right? So right here, manner in which title will be held. We've only got these drop-down options. The only time we ever allow them to free type is when it's a trust. Everything else, they're just going to try and get as close as possible. So I think this one was joint tenants survivorship, that it was. So we'll just go, as joint tenants, or there's a survivorship one too. This one isn't as much important. This is what pulls over to the 1003, so that's okay for it to be general. However, when we go to draw our docs, we're going to copy and paste that vesting straight in because we're not going to change anything. And this is what's actually going to show up on the deed, right there. Okay, any questions on that? We have this build final vesting button, but you really probably should not push that, because what that is going to do, it's gonna take this name and whatever names are listed there, add this, and that's it. And that might not be exactly the same, so they should always be copying and pasting or free typing directly from the title or the grant deed to make sure that that's accurate, instead of pushing this build final vesting button. Okay. Other thing we'll look at is the property tax amount. And every title looks a little different. Maybe did that page get?
Yeah, it's only a 9-page report,
Oh,
so it's
yeah.
probably missing the.
So let's just say that property taxes are $12,000 a year. That's expensive. So what they're gonna do, they're just gonna get that amount, divide it by 12, and depending on whether that file is impounded or not impounded, if it is impounded, we're always gonna round up to the nearest cent. So we do go all the way through to 2 cents, so their calculator should be, based onto 3 decimal points. If it is not impounded, they can round up or down based on, 5 or 4, based on what it is. So where they're gonna update that is on page 2 of the 1003, right in there. They would just update, $1,000, whatever that is. And then this proposed, did you already talk about how that's always our proposed and this is always the primary?
Yeah.
So if we're doing our loan on a primary residence, their taxes are the same on our loan as they are on the old loan, so that should be the same number. If this is a second home or investment property, those would be different, or that would be a really big coincidence. So they'll update that there. Also, they're gonna look and see if any taxes are due within 60 days. If they are, we can add that to our HUD if we're gonna be paying it through the loan. Borrower also has the option to pay that outside of the loan too. But where they would put that very specifically is in this 900 section right here, items required by lender to be paid in advance. We're paying them through the loan, but that's kind of considered in advance. So we would need anything due within 60 days to go right here as far as property taxes. So to Los Angeles County, and that installment amount would just be free typed right here. Okay. We're just gonna check title as well and make sure that our liens match as they do in Encompass. So usually, right here, we've got, you'll have your list of deeds. They're gonna look through that if there are list of liens. So if there's more than one, hopefully that's showing in Encompass that it's all been matched up by the agent. But you're just gonna come in here, look, we have 1. We're gonna come over to page 2 of our 1003. This is where all of the liabilities would be imported. So you'd want to look and make sure all the mortgages are listed as such that they came over from the credit report. Where these are going to be attached to the property is in 1003 page 3, show all of the OM. Right here in the property, let me just add one so you can kind of see. No, it won't show this. But what they would do is,
You could hit the import liabilities button on the page 2.
I'll just do this so then we can see right here. So let's say that this is our subject property. When they come in here and click this attach show liens, it's gonna pop up a list of all of those liens that are showing on the credit report. And then they can just look at the title, look at the credit report, match everything up. Liens are attached to brick and mortar, they don't float around. So anything that's any kind of mortgage lien needs to be attached to a property. If it's not, you do have problems running your cert, because Encompass and the cert pick up that, hey, there's floating mortgages out there and that don't jive. So they'll check that and make sure that the correct liens are attached there, and that's really what they're doing for title. So any questions on title? All right, so the credit report, the processors really aren't doing that much. It's really the agent that's doing a lot of the grabbing it, importing it. Processors aren't going to reissue or rerun any kind of credit. The only thing that they are going to do is if any credit supplements are required, we can order that through the credit report that is uploaded into Encompass. We have all kinds of training material on that since we don't have that. So if you do want to see that, you can always email me and I can send it to you if you wanna see what the steps are of what they're doing. But really all that they're doing on their credit report, again, they're just gonna review those trade lines and make sure that all of those liens are either on the 1003 and are attached to a property, or that they're marked as closed. So that's really all that they're doing there.
And it's all visual, I'm guessing. It's
Yeah.
not really like a computer that looks at, it's all visual, so like I don't think it would be very,
Well, what's the only thing where where the computer doesn't do everything that needs to be done is say for, because Encompass is only gonna pull in liens that have a balance. So if there's a zero balance HELOC hanging out on there, the borrower, the agent or the processor is gonna have to go through, review those trade lines, and if there is any kind of zero balance HELOC, we would have to manually add it into the system and attach it to the property, and if it is our subject property, we'd either have to pay it off or subordinate it. So that's where it could have an impact, and that's where they're going through, reviewing the trade lines and seeing if there are any mortgage liens that didn't quite make it over to Encompass since they don't have a balance. Fraud report, that's gonna be ran by loan setup. It gets automatically uploaded into this fraud folder. They're just gonna go through, review that, any alerts they're going to address. Depending on the alert requires different items, but it's basically some item of supporting documentation. Since the alert is on the fraud report, they're going to upload any supporting documentation into the fraud report folder where that alert is showing.
So it's more about Encompass and not how to process it.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to see like what would go into Encompass. You already went over the HUD?
Question,
You can show that.
appraisal, does the process initiate appraisal or is it just happen later?
It's gonna be initiated by the agent, and then once it doesn't get ordered
That's a
until.
submission milestone, I
Yeah.
think it.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, so it's ordered once the loan is submitted to process.
But the second step, okay, send to processing and then submittal, that's where appraisal initiates.
So the appraisal would be initiated at sent to processing, yes. For the most part.
and at this second, it's by value trust, it's automatically ordered.
Yeah, so it does go to the Value Trust portal, and then they will either work it themselves or they'll route it out to a separate appraisal management
Correct.
company.
So when it's finished, is checked, is it automatically?
No,
No.
what
Yeah,
truly
different.
triggers it is when you upload disclosures to disclosures, documents to the shelf file, and then when you hit that income received. So those three tasks that are associated with submittal is what orders the appraisal.
Okay.
Send to underwriting, send to processing happens about that same time. So if I had to equate it to a milestone, that would be a good one. But the origination process is what orders the appraisal.
all right, rental income, did you show them where that goes in?
We showed rental income for subject properties.
Okay. The only difference for non-subject property is once you come into page 3 of the 1003, and you've got your property, you would select the property, right down in here, you would complete the rental income calculator. It's going to kick out a number to be input right here. And what Encompass does is it takes the mortgage payment, plus or minus any of this income or loss that they're taking, and then if there's any taxes, insurance, or expenses that are being input there, all of these things are gonna combine into this net income or loss that then does eventually get kicked over to the 1008, either as a loss or as a positive into income on page 2 of the 1003. Okay. So once you've got everything updated, they're doing the same thing for insurance. They're gonna take a look at that deck page, come to page 2 of the 1003, calculate that monthly amount, get those into those areas right there, and then they're gonna be ready to submit in the system. Usually at this point, the appraisal is not in, but if it is, they'll go in there, check a few things, and just make sure that it properly reflects the file right there. And they're gonna come into this submittal milestone, and then they were gonna choose right here, the underwriter. We've already got our test underwriter in there, and then they would click finished. Because we have a required field outstanding right here, it's not going to let us click this finish thing. So I don't know if I could put in a fake one.
Yeah, you just put it in
And at this point, it goes to underwriter upon finish.
Right. So when you click the finished, it's always gonna stay in the processor's pipeline, and same thing for the agent, but it is going to go into the underwriter's queue. And underwriters are working off of 3 separate queues. They have an initial submission queue, they have a prior to docs queue, and they have a prior to funding queue. And the way the files get sent into those 3 queues individually is based on where the processor is submitting it. So this is how you get it into that initial submission queue, and we'll look in a second and see where they get into those other queues.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, so there's 3 queues: initial submission queue, PTD queue. PTD is
Process
prior
two.
to docs, and then PTF is prior to funding. And it's important that they get in the right place because underwriters are prioritizing their work based on different cutoffs and different priorities, and obviously our prior to fundings are highest priority, and then on prior to docs and initial submissions. Okay. So again, right now, it's with the underwriter. Once the processor presses save, it's gonna run the compliance report automatically again. Agent ran it initially right before submission, so yeah, we've got our things going on here. But the Maven will run, and it will pop up, it'll pop it up, and it will say passed or failed or warning. Processor will review and have to kick that back to the agent for any warnings or fatals that need to be addressed. Okay, so over to the underwriter.
So we'll go ahead and, more often than not, when you underwrite a file, there's 10 to 15 conditions. But in an effort to save time and to keep it easy, we won't add that many conditions. So underwriters are going to receive the file after it's been submitted. What they're going to do is, as Brandy kind of mentioned, they're going to run income calculations. They're going to look at preliminary title reports. They're going to look at appraisal reports. Brandy did a pretty good job of covering what we review and what we're looking at, so I won't spend too much time on that. But they're going to review the file, and they're basically going to approve it. So they're going to go to this form, transmittal page 2. Transmittal page 2, towards the top, they're going to key in who they are and the date that they approved it. So it was approved on July 22nd. We'll say the approval expires based off the documents in the file. Let's say our approval is good for 2 months. So this loan has been approved on July 22nd, and the approval will expire on September 22nd. So beneath that, they'll kind of identify what the recommendation is. It's approve eligible. We've already got our key number. This information would have been completed if it, for the appropriate type. If we had rental with multiple units, that would be completed. They would identify on the transmittal summary. The transmittal summary, they're also going to key in, borrower 1. As Brady mentioned, you have $40 an hour times 40 hours in a week times 52 weeks in a year, divided by 12 equals, $7,180. So they'll put their comments here. Sometimes the comments are in regards to net tangible benefit. It's definitely going to be in regards to any income calculation. If there were 2106 expenses, they'd key that in. 2106 expenses of $385 a month. So they'll make various notes on the transmittal summary with regards to how they arrived at their decision. Transmittal page 2, they make the designation that the loan has been approved. So approved by test underwriter on July 2nd or 22nd. And then they will actually go ahead and add conditions. So within the e-folder, we're familiar with the documents section of the e-folder. Now we're going to kind of look at the underwriting conditions section of the e-folder. So underwriters will hit this plus sign. Plus sign always adds something. And they're going to choose add conditions from condition sets. So there's a number of, there's different types: conditions for a purchase, conditions for a refi, FHA conditions. They have templated condition requests. You'll see all those right here. They'll go through and kind of designate, hey, I need a W-2. I need 4506 for prior 2 years. Let's go ahead and push those over. I also need, we'll say, a cash out letter, so we'll add that. And, you know, we won't add too many, but they could scroll through this list and basically select anything that they feel is applicable. And then it's going to issue a conditional underwriting approval.
What is the minimum?
The minimum amount of conditions, technically there could be 0. It's rare, very rare. I've very rarely seen files make it straight to docs, but for the most part, Brandy, would you say there's probably 5-10 conditions outstanding?
A good condition sheet is barely 2 pages. Anything more than 3 pages of prior to doc conditions is you didn't really do your job well.
Sounds like a Stephen Strom file. No, this one might be 4 conditions. We'll add we'll say a VOE as well. So it's a very simple process to add conditions. Question?
So these conditions are like pretty much like pick and choose, or something like there is a bucket for each of these types.
For the most part. So I mean, Brandy, think of any condition that you've seen.
Well, if they do have to add something that's not one of those, they can add they can make their own condition, but they can also modify those conditions that they're creating. They can go in there and make notes and make them more specific.
That was my line.
Oh, sorry.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So we've got 4 conditions, and as Brandy mentioned, if we do need to free type one, we can add a new singular condition. We're gonna name it, you know, classify it as something, access letter, and then maybe in here we'll type proof husband can access bank account and has total access to all funds. So you can free type them in like that, and now we have it. Or as Brandy kind of mentioned, you could go back to you can go to an existing condition. Well, that one we just created, but I could click on this one right here. W-2s for prior year for 2013 and 2012. So you have a name for the condition, and then you have a description. The description can be free typed. Brandy, would you say that the comments section is more for the underwriters to convey notes to the processor, or more for the processors to justify why the condition works?
More for the processor to go in there and input information. This area right here does not convey, that does not mirror the GL reports or other places in the file where notes go. So anything that would go in that comment section, it's going to stay with that condition. So it's kind of in that bubble.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. So we've added sets of conditions. We utilized the add condition set option. We also used add a new condition just from scratch. So we've 5 conditions here. We've identified that the loan was approved on July 22nd, and we identified our approval expiration date. Considering we have now done the work of an underwriter, I would be able to go here and select finish for conditional underwriting approval. So we are getting a warning there. Let's see if we can clear that out. Look like Hagop needs second signatures on his loan.
Yes.
Risky guy. So
Suspicious.
yeah, very suspicious living in Irvine, Hagop, Jack, California. So let's see. So it won't let me complete
Where is that
this.
sitting at?
I know.
That was my
Not an
that was my address test.
That's
Check how long he-
That's Hagop's special slice of Irvine, just for him, you know.
He's the mayor.
Let's see. So that one, Brandy, resubmittal. We need a.
Conditional underwriting you can search for.
Okay, so last finished milestone, we'll search for conditional underwriting approval. And let's see what we got. Hey, there it is, C-Strom test. That's a good one right there. I think this one might have been the one I primed last week, so we'll see. So let me just add one quick condition so Brandy can clear it. Underwriting conditions, we'll just add something. 4506, close, and then keep her busy. We'll add one more. We'll say W2. It's a great recommendation. And I don't see it, so how about we just do
That's
a
fine.
VOE? All right, so we've got 2 conditions outstanding. This has already been completed on the conditional underwriting approval. So Brandy, I'll now let you take over. You can go ahead and clear those conditions for us, please.
All right, so the way they're going to see, they get an email from Encompass letting them know that the underwriter has conditioned the loan, so they know they can come in here and take a look at them right here in the underwriting conditions. So they look here, see what they need to do. The way that they're gonna attach it to condition, double click. Actually, there's two ways you can do a condition, meet a condition, so I'll show you both. It actually looks a little different in here. It's a little weird. Let's do this then. So one way that they can meet a condition, let's say that the underwriter had asked for a compliance report. Here's my new one. I can come in here, choose this button where it marks conditions. It's going to bring up the conditions that I have to meet. I can choose which one this document meets right there, and I'll close it. Next thing I gotta do is I'm gonna have to come into the condition now. It shows right here that I've uploaded a document to satisfy that condition. So now I'm just gonna have to tell the underwriter that that condition has been fulfilled by me. So that's that. This looks a little different. Let me see what's going on. Normally, I wonder if it's because you're an agent and not. Okay, yeah, I'll do it this way. So right up here, I'm in my condition. It's asking for a VOE. I can come up here to this button on the top, and I'm going to assign a folder that contains the document that meets this condition. Let's just say it's that one. I'm going to push assign. And then within my condition, I'm going to click it fulfilled. So it's just, you both are the same, just whatever works best. So once I've got all of my conditions met, they have to do a few other inputs into Encompass right here in the aggregate escrow account screen. You know, taxes, they would come in here and say that it's paid to Los Angeles County. And then they'd have to complete this right side information from the title report. You know, last installment was $6,000. They paid it in April 14. The next amount due is that next $6,000. So they're just inputting that information into here. Next due date would be 12/1, and then when it's delinquent is 12/10. So they're just inputting this information using their tax cert. And then same thing, they would do that for their insurance. They'd have to input that information there. If they don't complete this information right here, it gives the underwriter a hard stop that won't let them be cleared for docs. So that's something that definitely does happen. They're gonna run gap credit, and then once they're ready to resubmit, they'll repull their 1008, 1003 in AUS. They'll come into this resubmittal milestone. Again, they would choose their underwriter. This time when they did it, there's already an underwriter assigned to the file, so we want it to go back to that same underwriter. So once they chose here, it would pick up who that underwriter was who was initially assigned to that loan. So they're just gonna choose that one and then click finished, and that's going to vendor code, policy number, okay.
I don't think I have access to the vendor
Right.
code screen.
So that would push us over to the next milestone, and it would go back into, this time, the underwriter's PTDQ. So you see how before we used this submitted, now we're in the resubmittal milestone, so that's gonna kick it to that different queue. Okay? So now it's back with the underwriter.
So file's been resubmitted to the underwriter with the necessary conditions completed. In that circumstance, they're basically going to clear the file for docs. So they're going to receive the file. Randy uploaded 2 documents assigned to each condition, so they come into the E folder. They're going to go to their underwriting conditions. They see that they've got the items here. So they're going to look at that and say, okay, that's exactly what I was looking for. Cleared. So it identifies the date and time that it was cleared and who cleared it. So this one has now been marked as cleared. It's no longer outstanding. We're going to go to the next one. This one, once again, was added, it was fulfilled, and now that everything is acceptable, we're going to go ahead and select clear. So now we've got those 2 items signed off. At that point, we're basically clear for full approval and ready to move forward with the loan documents.
I have a question.
Yes.
Considering a scenario where the underwriter is not satisfied with the processor's documentation, will he get a chance to send it back to processor again?
Correct, because with the resubmission, and the question was, In the event that one of those supplied conditions wasn't acceptable, would they kick it back to processing? Where we're at right now is we want to fully approve this loan to the point where everything you've provided is 100% acceptable, and this is how we're going to draw
A good
docs.
path.
Correct. So in the event one of those was not acceptable, they would not have cleared it, and they would have basically pushed it on back to the processor. Processor would then get the file, and it's going to say, hey, you had two conditions, and I don't really agree that this one's been satisfied. So find me something better. It's not cleared. It's outstanding. Processor would then have to, meet the underwriter's request and find the acceptable document. So in the event a condition is not fully satisfied, it will get pushed back from the underwriter to the processor, and processor will have to find the appropriate document that will allow us to clear that. So we've cleared the conditions. We feel that they're 100% acceptable. With the approval milestone, it looks like I need to input some information. So we'll say we've got a 3-bedroom property. There we go. Slow reaction times. All right. Yellow DD first unit subject property. Just key in a number. HUD 1 tax pay hazard insurance. So now that we've completed these cells, we'll go ahead and select finish. Okay. Let me find a lock loan at this certain milestone. Oops. All right, so let's pull up this one. So we've cleared all of the outstanding conditions. We're now in the approval milestone. And I have to, underwriting appraisal completed date, we'll say the appraisal was completed 7/10/2014. I'm now going to select finish. Okay, something else popped up. We'll go ahead and fill that in real quick. All right, appraiser name is missing. Brandy, where would this be?
1008, page 1 or page so much.
You could do to appraise. You could go to appraiser review too, I
Oh,
believe.
there it is, right there.
Okay. Looks good enough. All right, so back to the log. Let's see if we can finish it now. So now we'll,
I think name is missing.
okay, appraiser name, customer service. We'll see if that changes things around. All right, how about that? So,
Because of Steve.
yeah, it's when in doubt, just type Steven Strom, it'll work. So now we've got the approval milestone completed. I'm going to let Brandy go ahead and draw the docs. And Brandy, if you would be so kind as to draw the docs.
Okay, so this is where it gets a little heavy on inputs, so we'll just kind of go through them pretty quickly. We do set the signing appointment within Encompass. We'll try and see if it'll let us do that after we're done going, it will?
GLS, yeah,
It will.
GLS should work.
Okay, so before going to
Yes,
GLS.
that's true. It is not.
It doesn't work?
Oh, no, okay.
Okay.
Okay, then never mind. But basically what they can do is, they go into GLS, there's that middle column where it has a signing and it has add. They just click that button and then they're basically just filling in the blanks, choosing the day, the time, the location, and that's where they'll also upload the docs that are going to be sent out through GLS. If they are, if it's a wet file, the system is going to identify it as such, and it will actually stop the docs before they get sent to the notary, and the funder is going to go and review those and release those. So we'll get back to that, but if it is a dry state, the docs get sent straight out to the notary that's been assigned to the loan. And then those those notary companies, they have a portal where they can come in and grab those so that they are encrypted. First place we're going to go to start inputting information is this Greenlight closing screen. You guys saw it pop up really quickly. They would update that escrow credit amount in that box, but this file doesn't have one, so it went away. But they would update that there by looking in LSAMs if there is one coming over. They're going to change, normally it's marked initial, they need to move that to a final till. They're gonna come in here and choose a signing date. What's nice is once a date is chosen, all of these other dates are going to automatically change, so it is programmed in there to take into account any holidays or Sundays. So that is good. It looks like, normally that would populate. But right here, we've got our disbursement date. Right here for the extra interest date, they do have to have something in this area for a California loan, since we are required to disclose, any interest paid over the weekend. So what the processor is gonna do is they're gonna look at this disbursement date, which is the 28th. They're gonna go to the following Monday. Even if it's, a week away, they need to choose the following Monday, and what's gonna happen is that when Encompass pulls docs on a California loan, it's actually gonna calculate the amount of interest paid over the weekend, because we have to disclose an amount and not the number of days. So they will do that. They're gonna choose right here if they're paying an FHA payoff, yes or no. Right in here, they're gonna check and just make sure that these, title company is probably not Jack, it's probably, Henry's or someone else. So they're just gonna take a look in here and make sure that these vendors are accurate. They can use these contact lists to find them. Right here, they're gonna put the title order number in, APN number, those come straight from title. And then once we've actually have a signing set, this will populate. And since we haven't set our signing, there's nothing right there yet. So those are the items that they're inputting on this page. They're gonna come in here to the trustee name. They're gonna look on GRU, there is a list of which trustee is for which state, so they are gonna have to choose the correct one there. So any questions on that?
This is PTF?
This is when they're drawing their docs. So if it is on a wet state, all of their PTFs are pretty much already signed off before they can do this with the underwriter, but if it's a dry, there may be some outstanding PTF conditions for sure. So let's go over to the borrower summary origination screen. A few things we're gonna do here. They're going to get the names from title and match those exactly, because that does pull over onto the doc, so for your borrower and co-borrower. Same thing, they're going to come down here to the addresses listed right here. They're going to make sure that that shows, the accurate address. And very importantly, it has to have the complete street name spelled out. So street, avenue, drive, north, west, any of those things, they have to be completely filled out or funding will kick it back. Other address they're gonna look at on this page is our subject property. Again, has to be exactly as shown on title, legal description, with that full street designation spelled out. If it is the primary, they can push this button and it will pull that information down from up above. Next, we're gonna go look at the vesting right here. In this area, they would click on each borrower separately. We're gonna input all of the AKAs here from the credit report. They need to be separated by a semicolon to have unlimited characters. If they use a comma, the characters are limited for some reason. So that's that. We're gonna choose our borrower type. We have several different doc drawing checklists depending on what the vesting is. We're either choosing them as an individual, non-title, whatever it is. So we'll just keep it simple, individual. If there is a trust, we'll look at that. And then right here, again, we're just gonna choose the closest thing that we've got. So I think it was just, we'll just choose husband and wife as joint tenants. So they would do that on each borrower that they have. If there is a trust, they would input the information here, the trust name, the state that the file is held in. It should be an inter vivos trust. And then right here, they would put the APN for the tax ID. If there were any amendment dates, they would input that there, and then the trust date would be right there. And then in the beneficiary, they would put any for the benefit of information.
And this trust should be available in GRU.
So the trust, if it's in California, we don't need to get a copy of the full trust as long as it's showing in the vesting that's listed on title, the Strom family trust, dated January 14th, 2014. If that is all the information that's listed there, we're good. But any other state, we're gonna have to get a copy of the full trust, and that we would have to obtain from the borrower. And then, like we already mentioned, we wanna make sure that this is pulled down to be, as close as possible. And here, you'll kind of see, if we click this final vesting, it's just gonna make a mismatch of stuff. It's just gonna take all those things that we input, and it may be close, but close is not good enough on your docs. It has to be exactly as it is on title or on the grant deed. So that's where we would always just copy and paste. Okay, so any questions on the vesting inputs? So next screen we're gonna go over to is 1003 page 2. Right here, they're going to update their payoff amount. If it's short to close, they're gonna pad 10 days. If not, it'll be 5 days. So they can just put this balance, right here, free type that. Next in 1003 page 3, there is, so for the subject property, they will have to input the date acquired, so they can get that from the appraisal, from title, property profile. But this date right here will pull on over to the occupancy affidavit, so that does need to be populated onto the docs. So you will have to input that there. Next thing we're gonna do is just go and update the HUD. Really nice thing about Encompass and our pricer is that, once the pricer is set by the agent, it pulls all of those fees in. So really at this point, the processor is just going and adjusting a few things. We've got our origination fee, they've got their lender credits here. Where they're gonna start adjusting here is, if it's a HARP or a wet loan, we initially disclosed $50, but, it ended up only being $12.63. We would update that. And then, for example, let's say if there was a subordination, they would have to input, who that subordination was paid to. And then probably the agent initially disclosed $250. If it turned out to be less, they would come in here and adjust it to reflect what was actually charged by that vendor. And then based on whether it was paid by the borrower outside of closing, we would choose POC, paid outside of closing, by the borrower. And that's how we kind of get all that. The other really nice thing about the HUD is with this drop down, it's going to automatically choose for the processor whether that fee is APR affecting or not. So we had a lot of issues with the free typing and getting the APR wrong, so that made some problems. So that's been cleaned up, so that should be pretty clean and tight. Right here in Encompass, it's going to take the date that we input into Greenlight closing as our signing date and the disbursement date. It's going to automatically calculate the interest that needs to be collected up front here. And then again, if we're paying any property taxes or homeowner's insurance, we would have that on our HUD here in the 900 section. And then right here, if we are collecting or setting up an impound account, that information would be input here like Steve already showed you. So again, they're not really doing too much, they're just going and kind of updating it. They do need to put who those fees are being paid to and then making sure that those fees are what was actually being charged. So once we've got that HUD all put together, they're going to come over here and click the HUD 1A button. What this does is it pulls over the payoff amount from page 2 and pulls it on over to our HUD. So say they've drawn their docs and they have to go and change that payoff for any reason, they have to come back and click this box or the old payoff is going to show on that HUD. So we'll wait for that to update. Alright, so last thing we're going to do is we're just going to make sure that the cash from borrower matches on our HUD page 1, down at the bottom right here, and then also matches on the 1003 right here. So everything needs to match. That's kind of a little check for them to make sure that they've input everything correctly. Last few things we're going to do, we're going to make sure that the property information is attached. Right here, attach the legal description, so that should be checked. And then last thing, they're going to come into tools, into the file contacts, and it's around number 55 or so. Docs prepared by, they're going to input their information right here because there are certain states that require that the name of the person who prepared the docs appear there, as well as their, their contact information, phone, email, fax, so they'll input that information there. So we've done all of our data entry. The next thing that they're gonna do is actually go and order the docs. So where that's gonna happen, again, really nice, it's all integrated into Encompass. Right here, we've got Doc Magic for sending out COCs. Right here, Doc Magic closing docs is where we're gonna be able to choose that other package. Not surprised. See if it'll let us pull it up, no?
It will not.
It will not, okay. Well, one thing I can kind of show you before it makes it go away, if we do have a title-only borrower, we just place them right there. But right underneath here, there's a drop-down, they would choose the closing package, follow the prompts through Doc Magic, they log in, and then it's going to pull that list. They'd save it as a PDF, and then they'd go back into GLS order services, and that's where they would upload the docs for the notary. Again, if it's dry, they'll go straight out. If it's wet, they'll get stopped. So either situation, they're gonna have to do one last thing. Right here, the funding checklist. This is the other place where we're gonna be able to transition files. So right here in the transition to, they're going to submit for doc check. If it's a wet file, it's being submitted to the funder to go through wet check. And if it's a dry file, even though the docs have gone out, they still wanna get their file in line here for a funder to begin reviewing those, because they can always, kind of start adding some conditions even before the docs come back out. So they would click submit change, and then they have to click save, and that's the only way it fully gets all the way into their queue. So any questions on docs? So funding conditions?
Funding conditions. All right, so we have underwriters that will review the file and request prior to document conditions. Those must be satisfied prior to releasing final loan docs. Part 2 would be prior to funding conditions. So with prior to funding conditions, funder's going to go ahead and review the file. Brandy, they typically show up in the same section, I would imagine.
Yep.
So they're gonna add something, add a new condition. We'll go ahead and identify.
And these conditions are for funders.
So the funder has identified certain things that they still need, and it's going to have to be resolved.
So if you go up into where it said fund, if you go to the F's,
Okay, so
there's
here's,
like a lot of them.
so we'll say a borrower's authorization, we'll say a hand signed by borrowers. So we've added one prior to funding condition, and see if we can add one more. So looking in the fund selection, we'll say report not less than 90 days old. So pretty easy. We add those conditions just as we would add an underwriting condition. And now we're in a position where we can go ahead and satisfy this prior to funding condition right here. And Randy, would you like to take that over?
So if it's a wet file, the processor isn't going to be able to send out docs until all of these conditions are met. So they would go just the same way that we did with the underwriting conditions. Find right here, attach whatever it is that meets that condition and mark it fulfilled. Same thing for that one. Assign, let's say that one. And fulfill it, so we've met all of our funding conditions. So if this were a wet file, I would come back into my funding checklist right here, and I would come back to submitted for doc check. And then again, my funder's gonna come in, if all of those conditions are met, they're gonna release the file for docs. And then if this were a dry file, this would happen once the docs come back in. So this is where they start. It's the same things that are being done, but just in different order at different times in the process.
Can you explain wet and dry files?
Sure. So the difference between a dry file and a wet file is basically the function of, think of it as a signature, like once the ink is wet on the docs, we're required by law to fund that loan. So we're gonna take more precautions in those loans where we're required to fund them, make sure we've got the funds in, make sure that we have all the conditions, because we're gonna be required to fund that loan, even if they don't send that check in for $4,000. So that's where we're gonna make sure that all of the conditions are met before we even let them sign the docs. Dry files, if it comes back and there's problems, we don't get what we need, we're not required by law to fund that file. We can redraw, wait, you know, kind
So-
of send out a new set
So
of
what
docs.
files is the client, the customer has signed it and we're ready to just fund it basically?
And that's what's nice about a wet file, is that when the docs come back in, we've already met all the funding conditions. So if ever there are any conditions that would get added back on, it's more like a signature line was missed, they didn't date one of the pages or missed initials, or, you know, the notary missed a page where they had to do a stamp or something like that. So it's pretty rare. So pretty much what happens on wet files, docs get finally released, they come back in, the funder is just going through and making sure that everything was signed and dated and stamped. And if there's no problems, they're just setting it up to fund, and the processor never really hears about it again until they get an email that says your loan is funded. But with the with the dry file, docs go out, funder hasn't looked at it at all. So when the docs come back in, that's when the funder is starting to add some conditions. So the processor is gonna have, you know, they've got this 3-day rescission period where they've gotta move and make sure that they're getting whatever is required in and ready, so that by the time rescission is up, we're ready to fund that loan.
And that just applies, the rescissions for refis only, right?
Primaries and second homes.
Primary residence refis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's say there's no outstanding prior to funding conditions. Let's say we're ready to fund. We'll go ahead and demo that. Docs have been sent out, they've been signed, the file comes back. It was a wet file and we've already cleared all the conditions. What does the funder do to fund the loan? So funder's going to go to ideally 2 separate locations. Let's see where the funding worksheet is.
Oh, you're on it.
I'm looking for a different one. So there's a funding checklist and then there's a funding worksheet, I believe. Let's see, I gotta make sure I have access to it. Checklist. Funding worksheet. So we have the funding worksheet, and you guys will kind of take a look at it. You know, when was it cleared to closed? When did we order the funds? So this is when we're actually, you know, I've confirmed that my review is acceptable. Right now, today is July 22nd, I feel this file is clear to fund. So I say it's clear, cleared by, we'll put my name in here, so Steven Strom. Funds were ordered. Today I'm ordering the funds. It's kind of late in the day, so we wouldn't be funding this loan today, but we're saying it's clear and ready to go today. So I've keyed in this data. Down here, the funds sent and the collateral sent and funds released. These 3 dates are going to be the date that we actually fund the loan. So these top dates are when it was certified to be ready to go. These dates down here, collateral sent, funds released, and funds sent, is the day that it actually funds. So this is already filled out correctly. You have collateral sent, funds released, and funds sent. So that has been completed. We are now going to look at the title company information to make sure that we're wiring the funds to the correct location. So here, you know, if Jack was a title company, it would have the address, the city, the state, zip code, contact name, phone number, what have you. It's going to identify the routing number and the account number that we're sending the funds to. This title information will be completed, and then the title, I guess, bank account information will be listed down here. So to complete this page, they're going to say, this is when I confirmed it's ready to fund. These are the dates that it will actually fund. And this information right down here is going to be where we are sending the proceeds to. You know, the title insurance company name and the accounting information. So I've completed the funding worksheet. I now have to go back to the funding checklist. With the funding checklist, we're going to transition it to ready to fund, and then we're basically going to hit submit change. So performing those steps would actually fund the loan and wire those funds out. I've never funded a loan before, so I'm hesitant to save it in ready to fund format. I don't want to wire $200,000 to Jack at some random account number, so you'll forgive me if I don't submit that change. But all you would do is ready to fund, and you would hit save, and the funding has taken place. So that's pretty much a loan start to finish. I'm going to show you guys one last thing, which is how we would adverse action a file, whether it's cancel or decline. Hagop, is this okay to cancel or decline, or is this a file?
Do
that
it.
you- Okay.
So can I show one more thing?
Yes.
So how there's the 3 Qs for the underwriters, the 3rd Q is right here. Resubmittal to underwriting, that's to get it into their prior to funding queue. So they would come in there and do that.
Okay, so that's a transition.
After funding queue is ending queue.
Yeah.
After
So the only time they would really use that is if we have a wet file and there's an outstanding prior to funding condition that the underwriter wants to look at, because some prior to fundings underwriter looks at, some the funder will look at. So if they have anything that needs to go back to the underwriter for review, this is where they would send it again to make sure it goes into the properly prioritized queue.
So now it will be assigned to funding.
We would send it, if it's a dry file, it goes back to the underwriter and back to the funder.
Oh.
All right, so to adverse action a file within the Forms tab, there's going to be a selection for cancel decline. So we'll see that right here, cancel decline. It's very easy to adverse action a file. The cancel decline screen is going to tell you the disposition. So you have options to select. You'll see denied, canceled for incompleteness, withdrawn application, and approved but not accepted. This is going to give you the information as to making the proper selection. So we're going to say this file has been conditionally underwritten because we know the approval is finished. So it's saying after you've conditionally underwritten a file, you can either deny the loan or you can approve but not accept it. So with this loan, we're going to say approve but not accept it. Down here I'm going to type in the reason. Borrower received better offer from competitor. They have canceled. So we set the disposition based off the explanations up here. Use the proper disposition. We type in a brief note that will kind of, if you guys were to read this, you would understand what happened with this transaction, right? We don't need a 2-page saga that tells the whole story of the loan, but this needs to be informative enough where someone else can pick it up and look at it and complete a form based off that information. If this was acceptable, all I need to do is hit save, and that will move the file to status 9, which would be a withdrawn or a canceled application. So it's very easy to adverse action. It's just a matter of classifying it and hitting save. I won't hit save because we don't really need to save it. So that would be how you adverse action a file, and that's a loan start to finish. So any questions? I know we got one right here.
Yeah, at any given point of status of a loan, can we take this negative part, that is the adverse action?
So the question was, through various statuses, could an adverse action happen? So whether a file has just been apped, whether it's just been locked, whether it's been submitted, the client always has the right to cancel, walk away, or be denied. So adverse action, basically it happens when the action happens. So if the underwriter denied the loan, I have 30 days to adverse action that file. We don't wait 30 days because that's just lazy originating. We would do it immediately. If the client called me on a Monday and said, I don't want to work with you anymore, I'm not interested, that Monday I would adverse action the file. Whether it's resubmittal, whether it's submitted, whether it's sent to processing, the client always needs to have the ability to walk away from a loan. They're never really bound until that loan is funded. So adverse action could happen at any given state, or it's basically either instituted by the lender or it's requested by the client. Any other questions that come to mind?
Denied.
Yes.
When does that come into play? At the approval?
So the underwriter could very well deny the loan, and then that would force us to disposition it as denied. So this circumstance is saying, hey, you can't choose this one until liabilities have been imported. We would basically say a loan has been denied due to excessive debt to income ratios. So we would disposition it as denied and we would hit save.
And how soon could this happen?
So
During the
it-
first time it gets submitted to underwriter?
it could actually, so let's say I take your application and I run the automated underwriting system, because I need to run that automated underwriting before I lock your interest rate. If I find that your debt to income ratios are too high, I could adverse action you right there on the spot, because I can't get an acceptable automated underwriting result for you. So I, as the agent, would say, unfortunately, you're denied because your debt to income ratios are too high. So it could happen on the first call. I personally have adverse action, hundreds of files, unfortunately, on the first call. You run the AUS and they just don't qualify. It's unfortunate, but it would happen. So ideally, it could happen at the beginning or it could happen at the end. Or in the middle, anywhere and everywhere. Any other questions?
Curiosity.
Okay.
Credit gets run,
Mm-hmm.
appraisal gets ordered,
Okay.
it gets completed, and the client backs out.
Mm-hmm.
Who pays for those?
So that is unfortunately us. We
Pardon?
never collect credit card information or any upfront monies from the client. So in the event you lock a loan for a client, you order the appraisal, it comes back and they exit from the transaction or quit. We've paid for credit reports, we've paid for appraisal fees, there's man hours involved. One of the reasons why we don't like losing loans. So
Cost of doing business. I
Hey,
guess. Okay.
just the cost of doing business.
All right.
So, clients they'll get marketed by other competitors. They'll get the market may improve, so they may get a better offer from someone else. We realize we spent a lot of time and effort and money on that transaction. So at that point, we'll say, hey, send us a competitor's offer and we'll match it. We want to make something rather than nothing. Question?
Is it soft credit or hard credit?
It is a hard credit pull. Soft credit pulls are more when you do it for yourself. So if you went to the government's free website just because you were curious, well, in that case, it's a soft pull because that's just you for you purpose. If you apply for a home loan, you're asking for credit. So if you're truly applying for something, it's always going to be hard inquiry where it counts to your credit scores. If I was, let's say, Capital One and you had a $10,000 credit card with me and I just wanted to do a soft inquiry to see if I can give you $20,000, you didn't ask for that. I took it upon myself as a lender to say, I want to increase this man's credit. That would be a soft pull.
Okay.
So probably the simplest way to understand it would be, if you're asking for credit, it's certainly going to be a hard pull.
Okay. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Question?
One more question.
Okay.
We have different statuses for adverse actions.
Mhm.
So, if at all the borrower is coming back and saying that, no, I wanted to continue with my transaction, so what status is allowed?
So status 9 is for cancels or withdrawn applications. So there's either you don't qualify because you're denied, or there's you don't want to work with us, or for some reason we're not working for you. So status 10 is a denial. If the client can't qualify for the loan, that would be a status 10 file. If the client decides to back out or walk away, or they're just not responsive, we would cancel or withdraw that application as status 9. If I were to adverse action a file, status 9 or status 10, really I only have that day to fix the problem. Because once you adverse action, that is an official action on a loan. You can't just undo an adverse action. So if I were to save this as a status 9 right now, and then an hour from now I realize, hey, I could fix this, or client came back, I would have to call our loan disposition analyst supervisor and say, hey, I status 10 this file, but can you revive it? It's same day, client's back on board. If they've already sent out the letter, which typically happens pretty quickly, job's done, you got to start with a new loan. So adverse action is a recognized action by the government, and once it's done, you can't say, I undo it, and let's start with the same loan. We'd have to work with a new loan number. Any other questions? All right, well, fortunately we're done. I know we spent a lot of time in here. Appreciate everyone's time. In the event you guys have future Encompass questions in the future, feel free to reach out to me. All of you guys have my information, and I spent a lot of time in Encompass, so odds are I probably can help. So if you have any questions, give me a call, email me, whatever you need. But appreciate everyone's time and attention. we're done. Thank you.
Thanks to both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So we'll